if you could just tell me who you are and where you come from, as it were.
My name is Kathline Callister now, but I was Kathleen Kane, and I grew up at Glen Mona.
Whereabouts?
In Glen Mona House, next to the church hall. There's a field, and then just opposite the hotel at Glen Mona.
Did you go to Doon School, I imagine?
I did, and then I came to Ramsey Grammar School, but I came on the bus, not on the tram. But I did spend a lot of time on the tram, because my grandparents, although my grandfather had been born in Baldrummer Farm in Maughold, he later he was in Lake Farm, but he moved to Baldrummer Farm, Onken, or Baldrine, whatever, and I used to take the tram up to see them frequently. So yes, I was a Glen Mona girl through and through.
And so, how did you know Kathleen Faragher?
Well, they started a WI at the Doon. We had the inaugural advertisement for it in the paper, and Kathleen used to come up to the WI meetings. But I think also she'd known my mother earlier, because a sister of my mother, she was one of 10, told me just before she died, that my mother had been friendly with Josie Faragher very many years ago, obviously before 1930, as a young person. So when Kathleen came back from London, I was only a little girl. I remember going down on the tram, and we went to Ballure Bridge. Then we walked down the road, and she was living in one of the pink houses on Ballure Road. So that's my very first memory of Kathleen, and I was totally fascinated by the way that she did her hair, and it was done up on the top of her head, and it was always very neat, but I was fascinated by that. I think at that time, after the war, I mean, things were very austere really, and there wasn't much of anything, and a lot of ladies used to put a ribbon round their head and sort of fit the hair in round it, or else they had a big bun at the back if it was long enough. But hers was done up in it wasn't like anybody else's. It was very unique to her.
I guess she must have been quite fresh back to the island then, because she'd been in London, or in Hornchurch, I think it was.
Yes, I guess so. Yes, because she wasn't very old either. She was a similar age to my mum, so she was early 40s, less than 45, I should think. So that was my earliest memory of her, and going down to see her, and the sun pouring in through this lovely room. It's funny what sort of, you get a snapshot, don't you, of what happened. So it was a nice day.
You wonder if her hair was, or her fashion was London fashion, as it were.
Possibly. Yes, because it wasn't like the ladies did it here. Yes, maybe it was. Because then, fashion as such, it was ladies had a fitted suit and a top coat and a dress, but I mean, not the quantities of clothes that everybody has now.
So whereabouts was she living? I don't know the pink houses. I mean, they're still there.
Yes, what I call a lot of them were pink. The last big terrace before you get to Ballure Crossing, on the left-hand side.
As you're going out towards Maughold.
Yes, yeah. As you're going out. Yes, out of Ramsey. There's probably not one of them pink now, but they were pink then. Old. The beach hotel, and then there were a few, and then there was a lane down, and she was in the last block.
You don't remember which particular house she was in, do you?
It was towards the top end, but not actually the end one, perhaps the third one down, something like that. But no, I'm sorry. But she was there for quite a while, because it must have been towards 1960 that she moved to Glen Mona. So I don't remember her actually coming to Glen Mona, but I remember her there because she used to go and visit my parents. and she had her Manx, well, her English, I should say, was dotted with Manx, like my father's was. You know, if you were wrapping something up, he'd tell you to lap it up. Well, the Manx word is lapple, for wrap, or it is one of them. And Miss Faragher's was somewhat similar. He wouldn't talk about something shrinking, he would say it had cribbed. Again, that comes from the Manx. To shrink is cribber. So it was nice to see her. So she was there. I remember her being there with my parents, but I can't remember when she came to Glen Mona, because I left the island for a little while in 1967 and came back with 2 small children, you see, in 1970. So if I was there, I was busy trying to keep them out of the glen because the garden joined the glen. So it was direct route down to the river.
She was someone who was not well, I believe. Did you ever see any of that?
Well, she always walked, she was walking with a stick, and she, I don't know what was her problems, but it was because of ill health that she came back in the first place, wasn't it? But she was a tiny little lady, but such a lovely character. No, I remember her leaving Glen Mona, and sort of can see her now walking up towards the gate, and yes, very hobbly, but with a stick. And I think it was a piece of ash or something, or maybe holly, or something like that. My dad used to make sticks. He'd be watching them growing, but this one particular one that I remember her with had a little bit of a skew on it. So there we go. But it was nice. She was somebody who had kept the Manx sort of accent, so to speak, because it really, well, from 1872, I think it was, the Elementary Education Act, they had been forbidden at that point, hadn't they, to teach children in the Manx language. So I suppose from that moment on it had become diluted. But I went to the Doon School now. It was very unusual, but Miss Davidson was there, and she was very keen on Manx culture, because we did Manx language. We used to say the Lord's Prayer each morning. It was the point where she said, hands together, eyes closed. You know, we learnt it like little parrots, I guess. But we did that, and we had ducking apple, and when we had our Christmas carol service, we had a carol in Manx. So we were kept in touch with it. But on the whole, if we talked sort of broad Manx, so to speak, we would get pulled up. You know, if you said, I'm coming, which would be what we would say. You know, you were supposed to say, I'm coming. So what I'm saying really was, it was becoming very dilute, the dialect. But Miss Faragher sort of kept it, and to see these was lovely. You know, I really enjoyed them. And because we were losing, there was no, yes, there was a Manx museum, but there was no emphasis on teaching children any part of our culture. It was just going. It was sad, because I always felt an affinity with it and wanted to hold on to it. So to see Miss Faragher and her poems was extra special, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, I really thought it was lovely.
I'm intrigued by your mention of Manx language at Doon. Was that still existent in Glen Mona at that time? People speaking Gaelic?
No. But Miss Faragher, you see, she had she wrote poems, and she would go round to, I think it's probably Miss Faragher, because it was my husband remembers a lady going to St Olave's to a Pancake Day concert, and her sitting at a table and reading poetry. So I suspect it was her. And also, you see, when she went to the WI, they have a social half hour, and again Miss Faragher would entertain very amusingly. But she was prolific. It was amazing, wasn't it, how she wrote so much. And, I mean, she managed to capture, for me anyway, the essence of situations that she really wouldn't be in on. I mean, you must feel that, don't you?
It's, a lot of what she writes about is older women and their kind of almost conflict with
the modern
world.
Yes, that higher ground. I think that's wonderful. In one of the poems where they, you know, we had to say, well, I think she says something like, we've got to say please and thank you and sir, but now the children are coming in and shouting higher ground. What's cooking or something?
She does. It actually surprised me that a lot of her stuff is about the older female experience, and so I'd actually seen it as actively what she would have experienced
as a child, maybe.
And it's a lot of her poetry is first person.
Yes, and she must have just watched people tremendously hard. Presumably done that when she was younger. But she'd grown up in Ramsey, so some of these situations she wouldn't, you know, in one she says that she was more used to, the babysitting one for example, she says that she was more used to horses and cattle than for babies. I mean, maybe she'd seen nieces and nephews, but not to any great extent, I shouldn't have thought. But she'd obviously taken, absolutely drunk in the situations when she'd met them, I would think. Because, well, they are just wonderful, aren't they?
It's interesting combining how Manx culture was neglected in those days, and yet she's doing this celebration of Manxness, this Manx language, and also taking it from real life. I wondered if people were frightened around her in case she was going to take away any of their situations, any of their stories, and put it into poetry. I
don't think so. I'm not aware of it, no. But I don't know whether she... You see, she was not too well, so I don't remember her. I don't really know what she did, but I suspect that really she didn't go round an awful lot, but I don't know. I really don't know what she did, but the richness of it all and the way she's captured it is just second to none, isn't it? Because it's a way of life that virtually has gone. I know there was a lady I knew from when I was little. I had a very much older sister, so I often got called Helen. Well, she was Helen Mary, but there was another old lady that used to call me, well, not Mary, Mary. And when my children were small, they used to say to me, why don't you tell her that your name's not Mary? And I said, no, I can't do that. Because every time I met her, she used to say, hello, Mary, how are you doing? And all the world, I couldn't stop that. I thought it was too good. Because it would, as I said, it's something that was disappearing. In fact, it virtually disappeared at that point. So, there you go. I chose to be called Mary.
So none of your family ever recognised themselves in any of her writings then?
No, I don't think so. No. Well, you wouldn't know really, would you? But I never heard of the mother or father or anything say anything like that. No.
It's almost surprising because some of her stuff is so vivid.
You would think there was somebody there, wouldn't you, that she'd watched. But I don't ever recall anybody saying, oh gosh, this is me. Not at all.
I wondered if you could remember anything about her Ballure house when you went there. I imagine you went in and you went into the front room.
Yes.
And she went off and made a cup of tea.
Yes.
It wasn't as if there was a writing desk over here with her typewriter on or anything.
No, she was sitting on an easy chair, I seem to remember. Just a low chair, but it was an old-fashioned room. This is 1949 or 50. So, but I've still got this snapshot of it being really sunny, the sun beating in, and her sitting on, no, it was a low chair, and I think, what I remember was they used to have sort of big flat arms and just having a book or something on that. But I think she had a book. But I really don't know what the purpose of our visit was, or it must have been just purely social. I think we'd been invited down anyway.
And was it, were there lots of books? In a writer's house, one would imagine lots of books. But...
You see, I'm awfully sorry. I really can't remember. I don't remember, no.
I don't suppose you remember if she was hobbly with a stick in those days as well, either.
I don't remember her having a stick then, no. No. But, she'd apparently come home because of ill health, but whether it was arthritis or rheumatism or something, I don't know. But I don't recall her having a stick, because I do remember people with sticks, but I don't recall her having one. But of course she was only 44, 45, that sort of age, probably. So not particularly old.
Did she have a Manx accent when she was talking herself? Or was it just the odd phrases which crept in?
I don't recall the Manx accent, but of course she'd lived in London for 25 years, and Manx people tend to be mimics. I think they're very good to talk as the people do round about them. But obviously it was quite easy for her to drift back into it, because she did it for the, for entertainment for folks, which she really seemed to enjoy.
Did you ever see her do the entertaining thing?
No, actually no. I probably did it because I used to pop into on the way home from school, I would pop into the WI meetings. I had to be very quiet, but little girls had to be seen and not heard. So, but no, I don't. The only one I remember is when the WI did the sketch, and I don't know what the name of it was. The Mill Day, I think it was, or something. When they had Miss Faragher produced it, and it was one of her plays, and there were WI ladies that did that. Mrs. Stobo was Miss Kirry. I don't know who my mother was, and there was another lady or two in it. But that's the only sort of time I remember. And she obviously liked them to talk quite slowly, because the way that mother had to say her line was quite slow. You know, it was unemphasised, not quick.
That's interesting. You'd imagine that in normal everyday dialect speak, one would be speaking very quickly.
Well, do you remember the Miss Bruce that lived down? Yes, you would do, down in the Largan. Well, Catherine down there, she was very Manx, very broad Manx, and she used to say, "Oh yes, 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 you like your mother." She'd know my mother. She had her daughter, Olive, was about the same age as these ladies, and she'd obviously known my grandmother and my mother. But yes, she spoke like that, but it wasn't tremendously fast. But she spoke as Miss Faragher wrote, which was really nice, I thought. Used to always try and get in conversation with her coming home on the tram from Ramsey or something. But she wouldn't talk about wheels. She'd talk about the wheels of things. And there was one day she really did make me laugh, because she was saying, no, it won't be long till quit, young one, it won't be. Quit, you could guess what that is, have you? Wit. Quit, she was saying. But they had the lineage and etc. So she must have probably known some Manx, but they weren't allowed to crack on, because they were considered ignorant if they were speaking in Manx. Because it was one of my grandmother's sisters who said, when I was in the vanguard of those getting Manx lessons again. In 1963 it was the first one we managed to get in a school, because they didn't have anything like that, and it was a night class in Douglas with Mark Braid, and I obviously enjoyed it. And no books or anything. I managed to get a first lessons in Manx from somebody in Kirkmichael, but there were no books. So if you remembered something, if you went to a service, it was great because you had nothing to look at. So now, you know, everything's handed to them on a plate, isn't it? But this aunt said, don't you let anybody know that you're learning Manx. Because she'd been a little girl in 1880s, sorry.
I'm intrigued by that. Do you think Kathleen would have spoken Manx, Kathleen Faragher?
I think it was rather like the language that my father had. Not perhaps joined up Manx, but they had a lot of words.
Yeah.
They didn't know any better. I mean, he didn't call foxgloves, they were slag and slews. And lots of things were like that. If you saw a thin cat, for example, he wouldn't tell you it was thin. He'd say, gosh, that cat's shiny, isn't it? So these words, they were used to them, obviously, because they'd heard them. But I don't think they could join them up. My grandfather, he'd come from, one grandfather was from Maughold and the other one was from Braddon, and his family had been in the farm that's actually underneath Baldwin Reservoir in Ulliacon. And when he spoke, he had phrases, because he'd say to them, Crethagol. And you see now, they won't say it like that. They'd say Crethagol. And it was all much softer and all sort of joined together. So he obviously knew some, but Maughold, I don't know. But they didn't seem to want to pass it on. But I'd had a fascination from a tiny girl, and I've actually got a GCE O level, but I haven't done a lot for a long time because my husband couldn't learn it and I've had problems with it. But obviously it's still there.
It must have been amazing to be involved in that regeneration of Manx in those early days.
Yes, and when we came back here, it was when Halloo was around, for Derg, for Soston, you know. And there was a house daubed opposite to us. We actually had the car daubed as well, with F off English pigs. But then I was accused of daubing the house by the police, but because I'd been known to have been in, you know, the country dancing and these things, but I wasn't militant about it, but I had been involved, so there was still a suspicion about it, obviously, and we weren't allowed. We couldn't find anywhere to have a lesson in Ramsey after a while, and we used to go over to the park, you know, where they have the kindergarten type place, Parklands, yeah. That's the one, and we used to meet in there, so we didn't cause any offence, but it's shocking really, isn't it? Because it was the Manx language. Mind you, only the other day when I was having my hair trimmed, the hairdresser said, I don't know how Manx came up, I was talking to another lady alongside me, and she said, oh, when my husband hears anything Manx on the radio, he says, shut that rubbish off. So there's still there was a sort of feeling against the Manx. There was somebody down the road, oh gosh, you're Manx. And I don't know why, but I mean, I'd never done anything to them because I'm quite quiet, really.
And the Halloo Daubig, the word is, where were you then?
Sorry, which the
Halloo, you mentioned.
Oh, Halloo, yes. Well, it was. Well, they daubed a load of houses in Ramsey, Westalls on Lizare Road, that had something across the roof, and it was one on Westlands because we rented a house out there in Westlands Close, so it was there. I don't know, was it a brick that was through that window? But yeah, no, it was in Ramsey, because somebody, Rob went round to the police station with the car with all these V signs on it, etc. Somebody nearly went up into a lamppost or something. But it was gloss paint, white gloss paint, on a new car, which which wasn't very nice, but there we go.
Kathleen Faragher used to visit the family when you
I
were
used
young?
to, yes, used to visit my parents just in the afternoons. But my father was retired, so this would be in the early 70s.
Just for a cup of tea and a chat.
A chat, yes, and bag of sticks maybe, something like that. A few plums. Because I think that was something that the old Manx people did. You couldn't go and see them without going home with something. You had to have something. You had a bag of something, maybe a scone or whatever. But yes, she used to go over and sit and talk to them, and in the afternoon.
Were you over there when she came round and had a good chat?
Well, you see, my children were very small at that point when she'd be there. And again, I wasn't paying proper attention to them. Well, you don't, do you? You've got little people. No. So, no, I'm afraid. Because my father was always, he was a sort of storyteller. He used to remember comical things from the past. So I guess it would be on that vein that they would talk and chat. Because, well, it probably cheered her up, didn't it? Because he was always very nice and cheery, like that, with his comical stories. He'd see the funny side of things if he could. Although quite quiet, really.
So I'm intrigued. You mentioned the Mill Day play, or Jewel,
right,
or whatever it was. That was performed as the WI event.
Or yes, whatever. Yes, or part, an entertainment at a or something. Yes, that sort of thing.
And was that in the Doon Church Hall?
Yes, it was.
Up on the stage.
Yes, but I can't. I have no clue really when it would be. I suppose it would be in the 50s, mid-50s probably, something like that.
Do you remember any of it?
Well, I don't know what it came from. The only line I remember is the line that my mother had, which was, "Have the len of me hanks, Miss Killy, that I washed and dried out in the hill. I use it for boiling me puddings when the men's round after the mill." So I really don't know what it was in. Could it? Well, it seemed to be. That's the only line I remember. I think I had the handkerchief before. I don't know where I put it now, but it was a great big white silky one. But I'm sure it wasn't the right sort of thing. It would be a white cotton thing that they'd use for that. But that was the line.
It's amazing that you remember a line.
Oh, I do remember it because my mother said it so many times, and it was the only line she had. So I do remember it. Yeah, she was a bit nervy, very nervy in fact, and if she was doing anything, she used to get very, very het up over it. For example, if she was making a cake for something, we'd have loads of them, and I was allergic to eggs, so it was always very difficult. So, no, I really don't know what I'm hopeless really, aren't I?
Well, this Mill Day is not a play which is handed down to us. It's gone. So that line you just quoted is the only thing which is left.
Oh, right. Well, Miss Kirry she sat and she never said anything hardly. But, I really don't recall the whole thing, but Miss Kirry just sat and went, yes. Yes, she didn't really seem to say anything, but and what the other lines were really gone. But as I said, my mother practiced it, and I've probably not said it properly either. But it was as Miss Faragher anyway, so it was quite slow. She was the producer.
Was she on stage as well?
No, she wasn't in it. She produced them. They did as she wanted, so to speak.
Do you know why she joined the WI? Because I believe that there's a Ramsey WI, and so she must have got on a tram from Halloo.
I don't think there was a Ramsey WI at that time, because the first, well, there was an advert put in the paper for a Maughold WI. That was on one of those cards that I showed you earlier. And that was 1949, and they had their inaugural meeting. I'm almost certain that there wasn't one in Ramsey at that time.
And I'd read about the Maughold WI, and I'd always assumed that it being called Maughold, it would be down in the village. But it was...
Well, it was afterwards, but that was because they had a disagreement with Mr. Ferguson. He was always complaining about the way they left the hall, and he came over and complained that they weren't cleaning it up properly, and they'd left this. He'd got a little bit of dirt in the bucket that he'd managed to brush off the floor after they'd been in, so they got fed up with him. But he lived in such terrible conditions, poor man. The parsonage was really awful.
Where was the parsonage?
Where, just the house behind the church.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It was in an appalling condition, and he used to get quite irate about things. But, you know, living as he did, I think it was so sad. Because it was in the museum. There's a manuscript, and it's got the... I suppose it's a license for when the church was licensed to hold services in 1855. And there's also, I think, the one when they could have marriages. That was in 1897. Then there was a whole section about the land round about it, but there was also a piece about the state of the house and how the Reverend Ferguson had complained about it. And it said that the range was loose. There was a hole in the roof above his bedroom, and there wasn't any running water in it. There was a pump in the scullery. So he really was living in a sad state. You know, so it would make you a bit knocky, wouldn't it? So, I mean, I sort of felt sorry for him, really, the way he was. So they ultimately then, the WI meetings, moved to Maughold.
In that parish hall? In
the parish hall, yes.
When would that have been?
Well, it was obviously before 57, or 58. Probably about 55, 1955, something like that.
That's interesting, because I hadn't seen before Kathleen Faragher's connection to Glen Mona. I guess that explains how she first came to the area. Often a forgotten part of Maughold, though, isn't it, the Glen Mona area? Well,
it's a sort of new part of Maughold, isn't it? Well, when I say new, the mountain area was sort of bypassed for so long because the road didn't come through there. Well, the first time that there were carriage and four or whatever it would be going between Ramsey and Douglas, 1854. That's very, very recent. And the way you got into the Doon, because my grandmother family had the Doon Glen, they came in on a boat. And there was, down at Renab and the Barony, there were pleasure gardens down there. That was before the Bellite factory. And again, they came in on the boat for that. They were closed down when they were going to have the Bellite factory. But of course that didn't get off the drawing board, did it? Eventually it all fell flat. And now it's all disappeared, but it was a really big scar on the landscape, the Bellite factory, when I was small. But it's disappeared amongst the trees now, hasn't it?
And she never married. And she seemed to live a very amazing, independent life, I imagine.
Yes, I think so.
Is that a remarkable thing back then? Someone who could move as a woman to London to get a job and then come back not married. That seems remarkable, was it?
Doesn't to me, but then I had a cousin who did much the same sort of thing. She's still alive, but she's nearly, 89? But she was quite independent. And I suppose it depends what sort of... No, I don't think it was remarkable, because I think about it, my grandmother, she grew up in the Doon area, in the Doon farm. They had the Doon farm, they had the Waterfall Inn, they had the Glen. And as a 17-year-old, in, what would it be, about 1895, she went off to London. So no, I don't think it was remarkable. Because that was she'd have lived a very, very sheltered life. I must admit she didn't stay a very long time, but she certainly, you see, there was no way of communicating. She couldn't telephone them or anything. She just headed off. She had relatives that she was going to meet, and I think she looked after a cousin's children or child. I'm really not certain on the circumstances. She brought a teapot back for her mother, which I have, which is nice, isn't it? But so no, I wouldn't have said it was anything out of the ordinary.
Oh, I do have a couple of real questions about her, about how her poetry was thought of at that time.
I think it was greatly enjoyed, because you've got to remember this was at a time just after the war, and nobody had anything. Everything was on ration, and it was grim. And to go and listen to Kathleen's poetry was a marvellous release, I think. I think that's fair to say. And just for that period that it was on, it was lovely. Because it was a time of, I think, quite often great hardship here. There was an awful lot of the men had been killed, and things were still on ration, and, you know, lots of people were struggling. And I think at that time too, a great proportion of what people earned went just simply on food, and there'd be very little left over. So no, I think it was well received. It was a time of relief and release.
And yet no one's unlike when T.E. Brown, towards the end of his life, and Cushik during her life. People spoke of those as great Manx writers. As I understand it, it was as if they had been raised up to be important cultural icons.
Yes, but when we went to school, in all the schools there was a photograph of T.E. Brown. Yes, you're right. But I think perhaps there was a prejudice against, still, the prejudice of talking in the dialect. It wasn't well thought of by at all. It wasn't. I find I can slip back into it at the drop of a hat, as you can hear. So no, I think it was really well received. People would be in kinks, you know. Then you left the hall, didn't you, and back into reality, because this was just a little snapshot of what could be, I suppose. Or the way somebody else saw it, really, isn't it?
And what surprises me is that it wasn't recognised as on a plane with T. Brown and Cushik stuff.
Yes,
it was never
yes.
raised up.
I think probably because there were a lot of, I'm going to get told off, smack my hand, come-overs. So I should think that this infiltration of non-Manx people would have a real bearing on that. That's my feeling, anyway.
What's your favourite poem of Kathleens? Do you have a favourite poem?
Well, I like the airport. At the airport, I like Babysitting as well. But what else? I think they're very poignant. Well, I just love those. And what's the one on the boat? I can identify with that completely. 70, well, I'm not quite 70, 70 years of age and sick in Douglas Harbour. I qualify completely. But I have been sick in Douglas Harbour. Well, I've got to admit that I really enjoy them. I do. I'm not very keen on the one on the airs, but I do. I love them really.
And so, you mentioned that you prefer her poetry to Cushing's?
I do, yes. I think there's more joy in Kathleen's. But, well, yes, I have. I do read or have read Cushing's, but the overall feeling that I get from Kathleen's I like better.
Do you feel she's neglected?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, I certainly enjoy them immensely. And it was one of the Maughold WI meetings in November, it was, I think, that they didn't have a speaker or anything, so I read some of these for them. So it was just a bit of light relief. There were just a little group, and Anne James, Anne Poole, she actually knew her, and so it was just nice. But I think she remembered some of the times when she'd actually witnessed Kathleen talking at, I think I can remember at concerts, you know, doing a turn as they do. But I don't remember her sort of doing a whole evening on her own. But she did at WI, she used to just do social half hour, I think it was called.
You mentioned you might be willing to read some of this, if that's okay.
What have I got here? I've got At the Airport. Should we have a go at that one to start with? They are all very different, the way they come out. You know, some of them are more slowly and more in rhyme. Shall I have a go then? At the Airport. Loss help us, so that's a plane, is it? 'Tis the first time I've seen one close by. My, them quails look too small for a body, like a sow waddling round in a sty. What's them men doing with pipes on the ground there? Pumping air? Oh, you're having me on. They're not blowing that big plane off the floor now. No, 'twasn't yesterday, boy, I was born. And is that Scotcher people going on her? Reminds you of a crowd at the fair. Goy high, but she's never be lifting with all that weight on. And my heck, look there, they're climbing the steps, all the lot of them, just like cattle going into the mart. That's me niece in the bright yellow gansy. Ah, she's a right one, is Janie, real smart. Yes, she's flying to Australia tomorrow. She's a nurse at some queer-sounding place. Been home putting a sight on the family. She's me brother's girl. Her ma was a lace. There she's skeeting out of that window. Ta-ra, girl, ta-ra. Oh, my. She'll be in London by the time I'm at Vauxhall. Fair shifting them planes when they fly. Look, the men's clearing off at the gangway, and that big fella's shutting the door. By gosh, but she's looking top heavy though. Are you sure that she'll lift off the floor? Loss, it's only one propeller that's working. I thought it'll be starting, you say. Oh, you're right, boy, you're right. Look, she's moving, but stable, she's going the wrong way. It's in Castletown she'll land. See, I'm telling you, she's going along by King William's Wall. Ah, just wait till I get home and tell Nellie. She said the boat would be safer for all. Goy, she slewed round. What for she stopping? There's something wrong. Tet, I'm all of a sweat. She's right enough, you say. Just warming up like. Ah, well, thank the good Lord for that. There she goes, straight across that big meadow and heading right out to the sea. Ah, she's lifting now. Look, boy, she's lifting like some tremendous big flying bird. Ah, well, I'll get back to me milking. Now Janie's gone and I've seen all there's to see. Jet planes and the like, you can keep them. Aye, boy, A tractor'll do my.
That was lovely. Thank you. Why did you choose that poem? That's a...
It was the top of the pile that you gave me. How is that? Honest. Oh, yeah, the other one that I had was I like Babysitting as well. I think that one's tremendous. Tremendous, boy, tremendous. But you see, she had no knowledge of children as such, not like this. But I love that when she'd got them all settled down and the baby wakened up, and what does she say? Something. She says they're all like savages here. They were running around. Yes, and the child nearly screaming his head off as I gripped him all awkward, poor chap. Then the nappy was whisked from me hand, girl, and the little flat took from me lap. You know, it was all, yes, because the girl had said to her, he needs topping and tail, and Miss Curlett lost. She didn't know where to begin. I just thought it was wonderful. So there we go. So that was a true answer, because I think these are they're all good, aren't they? And the Manx Wedding, this one that she spoke about, I was one of those little girls, because I'd written on. There's a copy in here of this one. I'd written on it a long time ago, because my writing's not quite like that now.
I was one of the children who took part in that Manx wedding. We wore long print dresses with frills round the bottom, white pinafores and shawls. It was a lovely occasion, again in a Manx wedding at Maughold, millennium year 1979.
That's amazing. Whose wedding was it?
No, it was the Manx Wedding. Have you not?
Yeah. Tell me about that. Right.
If you open that,
This?
where the green, yes, open it where the green thing is. That's the. It was supposed.
Gill's, the Manx Wedding.
Yeah, that was what was done. It was supposedly a wedding out at Lazaire, but obviously it was held in Maughold. And they had it on another occasion. It was done at Halloo. Oh, and they did one in Laxey as well.
And it was just recreating.
This and yes, they recreate the wedding. As Kathleen's got it, the whole thing here. You know, the parson comes on the horse, and the bridegroom, etc., and the bride comes in on it, and they go into church, but obviously they don't have a wedding as such. But they sing a couple of hymns or something, and then they'll have a table set out, and the guests all sit down to a meal around that, and then this will be sung. And where she's got here, it finishes off, the like of the wedding, no never was seen, no never was seen. And this is what we get in this. You'll know the tune of that. No never was seen, no never was seen. That's it. Yep. But so that was what was done up at Maughold, and what Kathleen had enjoyed.
No, you were saying that you were never featured in a Kathleen Faragher poem.
Oh, I did. Yes, I did. Yes. Guilty as charged, sir.